The UK, once upon a time, a really big empire, now facing the economic collapse. How did it come to it? Hi, everyone. This is Zuzana from Zuzana Reacts, and this is a channel where I learn all things Power Up with your help, and I just share my Slovak Central European point of view. And in today's video, we are going to look into what's happening actually in the UK and what impact has it had, because it does have impact on the entire world and what we can learn from it. Now, obviously, India has been tied with the UK for many, many years. So it would be interesting to know and deeply analyze with Think School what impact does it have on the world, on each country, and what can we learn from it. But before we jump into today's video,
please like this video and click on the subscribe button and turn on the notification. Thank you so much for your support.
I say, let's jump into this analysis together and learn what we can get the most out of that, right? For our own well-being and for well-being of our countries.
Hi everybody. The United Kingdom was once the symbol of power and heritage because of their 200 years of looting colonies like India.
The West, this predatory form, came into India in the mid-18th century.
But in spite of all the treasure hunting, now the UK is going through the worst economic and social crisis in its history. As of 2024, while the debt level of Germany stands at 63.74% of its GDP, Ireland stands at 42.5%, India stands at 58.2%, whereas the UK debt stands at 99.5% of their GDP. And you know what's even more worrying? While in other countries the workforce is getting bigger and bigger, in the UK, people are leaving the workforce due to long-term sickness. At the same time, UK's productivity has remained stagnant since 2008 crisis. The hospitals are falling short of nurses, and 45% of the patients have been waiting in an emergency for 4 long hours. And today, there is such a big labor shortage that UK has a shortage of more than 100,000 truck drivers. And all of this put together, UK is seeing the sharpest increase in absolute poverty in 30 long years.
Above 11%.
That is clearly the highest figure in 40 years.
Can't raise taxes, can't really let debt go much higher. 2 million people in the UK go without food for at least one day in a month. And if you remove London from the UK, the country is as poor as Mississippi, which is the poorest state of America.
So the question is, how did UK's economy fall into such a terrible situation? What are the biggest mistakes that UK made which caused this massive economic crisis? And lastly, what are the lessons that India needs to learn from the fall of UK's economy?
Is the Great Britain really that great? The United Kingdom, it is sliding into a recession.
More people in the UK were pushed into poverty from rate hikes.
The economy is shrinking and the latest economic data does not look good.
The UK's cost of living crisis will cause thousands of premature deaths.
This is a story that dates back to 2016, and this is when UK decided to exit the European Union. So on 23rd of June 2016, in a special election called the referendum, the people of United Kingdom voted to leave the European Union by a 50-48 vote share. And this is where the chaos in the economy started with something called Brexit.
Okay, I lived that moment. Okay, that moment when I discovered what has happened, I could describe to you. It sticks here. It sticks here. Like when I looked at my phone and I looked at a Twitter, and I couldn't believe what just happened. It was a shocking day, I think, for everyone. Well, those that voted for leaving, they rejoiced, but I think most of the London was like, WTF just happened.
The UK has voted to leave the European Union.
We've got our country back.
Well, the Vote Leave side presented a very optimistic view of what the British economy would look like after Brexit.
Now, before we dive into Brexit, you need to understand a very, very important part of history, and that is the formation of European Union. Long story short, after the World War II ended, the leaders of European countries realized that if they act as individual countries and if they compete with each other or fight with each other, they'll be wasting a ton of money and a ton of manpower. And if you look at the map of Europe, you will see why it makes sense. Look at this, guys. The European countries are so small that if every country had to spend on military to guard their borders, it would be very costly, right? Similarly, if a country like Hungary wants to trade with the world, it would be a landlocked country with no access to sea at all. So if they wanted access to the North Sea, they would have to pay taxes to Austria and Germany because they would be using their land. So in this futile race of defense and trade taxes, none of the countries would have progressed well at all. This is the reason why in 1952, six countries, Belgium, France, Germany, Italy, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands, they all decided to take their economic relationship to the next level by forming something called the European Coal and Steel Community. And this gave them some incredible advantages. For example, when France needed lots of coal and steel, Germany offered steel and coal to France to help them in post war reconstruction. Similarly, Germany was able to sell its coal and steel to other members, and it was able to make a profit with steel products to develop its economy and to decrease its debt. Similarly, countries like Italy, Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg, they were able to get access to countries with a larger population like Germany and France. So all of these put together, the businesses in these countries got access to six countries with no taxes or opposition. This is how a small union of countries benefited by sharing both resources and access. And this union was so successful that more and more countries started to join this union. And fast forward to today, it is a union with 27 member countries. This is how, ladies and gentlemen, in 1993, this union evolved to become one of the most powerful unions in the world, which we all know today as the European Union. And all these countries got three major superpowers by joining the European Union. Now listen to this very carefully, because here's where the heart of UK's economic crisis lies.
Okay, so what I want to add there, which he hasn't mentioned, like this trade union, which it was originally, was really initiated by the US. And I mentioned in many videos, but I know that there are new subscribers coming all the time. So I just want to emphasize that, because it would have been nice if that was added as well.
The first superpower that these countries enjoyed was the superpower of EU citizenship, which means all the citizens of European Union could move and reside freely in any European Union country. Secondly, in the European Union, goods, services, and capital could move across national borders without any barriers. So, a furniture businessman in Greece could sell his furniture in the UK, and there was no extra tax and no trade regulation. And lastly, for the small countries, the European Union gave an unfair advantage of trade negotiation. For example, imagine if a small country like Hungary and a giant like India sit at the negotiation table. Now, you tell me, who will have an upper hand in this negotiation? India has a population of 1.4 billion, while Hungary's population is only 10 million. So if we sit down for a bilateral trade agreement, we could tell Hungary that we will give your automobile industry an access to a population of 1.4 billion if you reduce your import taxes by 25%. But Hungary will have to decrease the import duty on Indian automobile by 50%. Why? Because we are a bigger country and we can exploit a small country because we are giving them access to a much bigger market. But you know what, guys? Here's where the European Union came in. And they said, instead of an individual country bargaining with India, the entire European Union will sit down with India to negotiate. So now, the European Union is sitting down as a single entity with a population of 447 million people. And this makes them so powerful that while India has a population of 1.4 billion people and a per capita income of $2,700, EU as an entity comes with a population of 450 million people and a per capita income of $52,000. So now, do you realize when European Union as a giant entity sits at the negotiation table with India, the EU has a much better bargaining power against India, even though India has a population of 1.4 billion. So this is such a fantastic arrangement, isn't it? Every country gets better negotiation power, better citizen freedom, better relationship with European powers, and most importantly, you get market access to a much wider population as compared to your own country. Then the question is, why did UK exit the European Union? Well, out of the many reasons, here are three of the most important reasons why the United Kingdom exited the European Union. The first reason was that UK thought the European Union benefited more from UK than UK benefited from the European Union. For example, between 2012 to 2016, the average volume of fish caught by the European Union fishermen in British waters was 760,000 tons per year, whereas the British fishermen caught only 90,000 tons of fish in the EU waters, which was 8 times less than European Union. Similarly, in 2013, UK's gross contribution to the European Union budget was around 17 billion euros, whereas they received back only 6.31 billion euros. Now, if you look at the net contribution of UK, it turns out to be 10.76 billion euros, right? So, if you see, there was a huge disparity in budget contributions among the European Union states. So, this is the reason why the Brits felt like they were being robbed by the European Union. How ironical, isn't it? For a change, the Brits felt like they were being robbed. If you know what I mean, that is hilarious. The second thing that bothered them was immigration.
You're gonna just stop here. This is too funny. I love how he it's like, if you know, this guy is gold. This guy is, like, isn't that ironic? Yeah, but you guys, they are the imperialistic power. They always have to be on top. I'm speaking as someone that lived there for over a decade.
So while the European Union expanded, several countries like Poland, Czech Republic, and Hungary got in. And because citizens could move across borders, many people started coming from less developed.
It is so sad that he's actually keeps on constantly omitting Slovakia. It feels like he assigned Slovakia to Hungary, which would be the biggest crime you could do to any Slovak person because of our history, because Hungarians are to Slovaks like what British are to you guys. So it doesn't sit well.
Countries into the United Kingdom. And foreign population almost doubled from 5.3 million in 2004 to over 9.5 million people in 2021, which was about 12% of the entire population of UK. So the Brits felt worried about foreigners entering their land. Again, how ironical, isn't it? The Brits were worried about foreigners coming into their country. This drastically increased strain on public services and housing, lowered wages of workers because of oversupply of labor, and eventually it decreased job opportunities for their own citizens. This was the third problem that UK had. And lastly,
the problem is that they're lazy. I'm going to call it out. They will not work for the jobs that Polish people, for example, will work for. That's a harsh truth and harsh reality. But let's continue.
Kingdom felt that they could easily negotiate better deals with countries like India rather than the European Union doing it for them. These are the reasons why they decided to conduct a referendum to opt out of the European Union. So after the referendum of 52-48, finally, Brexit happened on 23rd of June 2016. But, as it turns out, as of now, things are not going well for UK at all. And this is what the situation in UK looks like.
Is not much better.
Food prices soared 13.6% in the last 12 months, and record housing costs are piling pressure on UK households.
So the question over here is, what on earth went wrong with Brexit, and why is UK in such a terrible situation? Well, the first major hit that the country faced was trade. If you look at the stats, you will realize that European Union was one of UK's largest trading partners. As of 2022, while UK exports to EU accounted for 42% of all their exports, UK imports from the European Union was 48% of all UK imports. So you can imagine how much the UK depended on the European Union for trade. But after Brexit, the UK was no longer a part of the customs union, which allowed them the flow of goods and services among the EU countries without any import duty or customs duty. So after Brexit, UK goods got taxed while moving to every country in the European Union. So to solve this problem, UK thought they could simply sign something called the Free Trade Agreement. For those who don't know, FTA or Free Trade Agreement is when two or more countries agree to trade with each other with no taxes or very less taxes. So the UK thought they could sign the Free Trade Agreement with the European Union countries and they could easily trade with each other without immigrants, without contribution to the EU fund, and without allowing other European countries to exploit the UK. But you know what, guys? Here's where the UK economy faced a big problem. And this is a problem that even India is facing in 2024. So the question is, what is this problem? Ladies and gentlemen, this problem is that UK and India both are not manufacturing driven economies, we are service-driven export economies. So we don't make most of our money by exporting products, but by exporting our services. While the UK exports financial services, India exports IT services. So the question over here is, why is a service-driven economy so dangerous, and why is manufacturing better for India and UK right now? Well, there are three simple reasons. Number one, manufacturing industries can provide way more employment as compared to service industries, and this is for both skilled as well as unskilled people. For example, while the IT industry constitutes 7.5% of our GDP, the textile industry barely accounts for 2.3% of our GDP. But if you look at the employment that they provide, the numbers are staggering. On the outside, if I asked you which sector would recruit more people, what would you say? Of course, the IT industry employs more people, right? Because their contribution is almost 3 times as much as the textile sector. But you know what, guys? While the IT services industry of India employs 5.43 million people, our textile industry employs 45 million people. And while the IT industry mostly recruits only skilled people, the textile industry employs millions of unskilled people along with the skilled people. So, the manufacturing sector provides way more employment opportunities as compared to the service sector. Secondly, while the service sector is prone to more.
But I just want to add, I feel like with the unskilled workers, like, because I worked in a company and I was looking a lot in the future of skills, like, the thing is that these jobs are going to slowly but surely go. So betting on that, I don't think is the smartest decision. Like, you will definitely have robots replacing unskilled workers. So it's a food for thought.
Economic shocks, the manufacturing sector is relatively shock-proof. For example, during the 2008 recession, while the financial services industry and the marketing services took a massive hit, companies like Nestle, Procter & Gamble, and Unilever, they were not as badly affected, because while the people could cut down their spending on financial and marketing services, they could not cut down on essentials like razors, detergents, and baby foods. And lastly, while manufacturing is easily scalable to increase exports, scaling a service company is very difficult. For example, if I have to increase the production of iPhones from 10,000 to 20,000 units, I can recruit, train, and deploy people within a few weeks. And on top of that, all I have to do is get new machines and run at higher capacity. But if I have to go from 20 to 30 clients in my financial services business, it is very difficult. And by the way, guys, unless you're an entrepreneur, you can't understand the pain of what I'm saying. So if you can't understand this context of the pain of expansion, just talk to any service industry business owner and they will tell you everything. So
I've been there. It is very painful, but it happens and it's not impossible. Like, in one of my jobs, I had to mass hire 14 people directly to report to me. It was a hell. I ended up with the biggest burnout of my life. But it's not impossible. It can happen, but it's very difficult. It's very difficult if those above you are not listening to you, disregarding you, and all that kind of stuff, So very difficult, not impossible.
Long story short, the manufacturing sector has 3 major advantages over the service sector. And these advantages revolve around employment, scale, and resistance to economic shocks. But now, if you look at UK's economy, 81% of UK's GDP is dependent only on services. And if you see their production, it has been stagnant for over a decade. And this is the reason why, ladies and gentlemen, 2 things happened. When the service industry had to comply with 27 different countries for legal and financial services after Brexit, the service industry of UK got disrupted. On top of that, they saw 2 major crises with COVID and the Russia-Ukraine war.
It's been revealed COVID-19 has dealt the UK's economy its biggest blow in more than 300 years.
The Office for National Statistics has revealed the pandemic led to a 9.9% drop in the country's GDP over 2020.
The actions we have taken to sanction Putin's regime are not cost-free for us at home. The invasion of Ukraine presents a risk to our recovery, as it does to countries around the world.
Isn't that ironic that Mr. Boris is sitting there, who had single-handedly killed the entire deal for the peace? I can't. Like, it's the Rishi and Boris right behind him. Same people, same country, one talking one thing, another. I rest my case.
we should be in no doubt. Behind Putin's invasion is a dangerous calculation.
So as we all know, two economic shocks resulted into yet another disruption in both the service as well as the manufacturing sector. This is the second reason why the UK is suffering, which is over dependence on service industry. And lastly, now because of Brexit, UK is also witnessing a labor crisis. Long story short, as of 2021, 200,000 EU citizens have left UK after Brexit. In addition to that, UK has a shortage of more than 100,000 truck drivers. And what's even worse is that there is also a shortage of 30,000 nurses in hospitals. And in all, as of 2024, there are 889,000 vacancies in the UK, because of which sectors like hospitality and transport are struggling. So now, UK is finding it extremely difficult even while the global economy is growing. And to make matters worse, the pound sterling is depreciating, which is further causing inflation and it is making people poor. So all of this put together, UK has now entered into a vicious cycle where the government is not spending on health and welfare for people. People are not able to work because of long-term illness. These people are neither earning nor spending. So again, the economy is not growing at all. As a result, neither the government nor the businesses have money to expand or earn. This is nothing but the cause and effect relationship between the government spending, public health, workforce participation, and economic growth. This is the story of the European Union, Brexit, and its impact on the UK economy. And this entire story teaches us three very, very important lessons for the Indian economy. Lesson number one, never consult stupid people for an important decision. In this case, the decision of Brexit was not made by the economists of the country, but by the people of UK who obviously did not know anything about running the economy. So if you ask an unemployed worker if we should ban foreign workers or not, he will obviously say yes, right? Because that would give him more demand and money even if he is incompetent. But what on earth does a worker know about running a nation? So if you consult the people of the country for a critical economic decision, it will lead to a disaster because a mob doesn't understand economics. Lesson number two, there are many economists out there who believe that India can grow by boosting its service industry. But while the focus on service industry is absolutely important, it is equally or perhaps more important to grow our manufacturing sector. Because if we want to grow our economy and secure our people from economic shocks, it is easier with manufacturing than with services. And lastly, always remember, if we want to grow our economy in the 21st century, globalization for us is as important as self-reliance. So we must be self-reliant. At the same time, we should not hesitate to trade with the world, because self-reliance is not equal to isolation. These are the lessons that India needs to learn from the economic crisis in UK. And I just hope.
What a fascinating video. So as I mentioned at the very start, I've lived a day, I've lived this. As I'm not an UK citizen, I couldn't vote in that. So it was the horror unraveled the night before, when I actually never really used Twitter, but for that particular time I did. And I was like looking at the exit polls and everyone was like literally voting out. And the morning shock was a disaster. So I totally fully agree with what he's saying the causes are and why people want it out. They basically said, and at the start of the day showed Nigel Farage, he kept on, apparently it's not really directly coming from him, but he kept on repeating, and that the NHS, so their health services, are going to have £10 billion. So people were really manipulated a lot in that decision. And but for me, it's more about, I feel like they're still because London voted in. I think that London is like the growth engine of the UK, and then the rest is the UK. I feel like London has almost nothing in common with the rest of the country. That's my view. And then I feel like my experience and the people that I talked to, they basically talked about, we don't want to be told what to do by the European Union. We don't want to have unelected people that decide about us in the EU. And what that, we don't want to be United States of Europe. And to me, that speaks colonial mindset more than anything. I think that their pride has taken over. That yes, we had a lot of people, I guess, from the region leaving. A lot of Polish people, they really have not a great rep, and in the UK. But they would offer cheap services and actually better quality services than the native ones. So I get it. I get it why like a lower class people would be irritated. But yet again, I feel like the lower class in the UK is very patriotic. They care about football. They are these groupies. They go to the football and they create a lot of mess. And then they're easily pulled to believe like this is Great Britain. To me, the Brexit was, yes, it had like the economical factors that he had enumerated, but it was a lot of pride. That is my take on it. I lived it. And I think what is really important, what he talked about, the lessons are, and just don't consult with stupid people. I love this man. He's right. He is right. Like, there should have never been a referendum. I don't know why the Cameron has done it. Apparently, he's now resurrected his back into politics. I don't know how anyone can look at the guy anymore. And yeah, I think there is a lot to learn. And I really loved his final point, and I've written down is self-reliance. And I think not only for India, but also for the EU, we have to start being self-reliant. I feel like there is another huge bomb-crushing recession about to happen, and I think we'll explore it in another video. And that will impact everyone. But I think, for example, in Europe, it's a tiny bit different than perhaps it would be in India. But I think he's very right that India would have to be self-reliant. And I would love to know what actually your take on this video is and what you have learned and what your thoughts are. But for example, for the EU, because we are this, we have the trade union, but the way it works is that you are, for example, forbidden to be self-reliant. You see, there's the dark side of the European Union. Like Slovakia, we could be fully food sufficient if we wanted to. I think we could even get into energy sufficiency. And I think this is what our current government is starting to work towards, but we could be. But because there are these agreements like, oh, you can only produce 50% of your energy. So it's kind of like, you don't have that in India. Like, it's you're kicking for the same team. And even if Europe, it looks like to you that it's kicking for the same team, it really is not. And this is why this whole European project in my head can never work. Because it's very different countries with very different mindsets, different histories. And if you're holding one another hostage in those, trade deals, it's not great, right? Like, it can happen if you go outside. So this is from the inside part, like, where it's just very different. But India, as a subcontinent, as a kind of, it's country. European Union is not a country. It's just a union of number of states. I know that you have number of states there as well, but maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine that you would not be telling Gujarat, like, stop producing food. And then I don't know, I'm just going to make up Tamil Nadu, and because you're prosperous, we're gonna fine you, and you're only allowed to do 50%. I would hope that this is not happening in India. And yeah, the self-sufficiency, I think, is super important. It's just very different how it gets materialized, and love to know. What do you guys think it's going to happen with the UK? There are many people that believe that UK is going to be able to resurrect itself and come back to the glory, but I think it's one blow after the other. I think it benefited more all around being part of the European Union than out of it. Everything that he said about the drivers, I know because I have a friend in a trucker industry in the UK, and he was like, it's impossible that the truck drivers are now making crazy amounts of money because there's a little of them. yeah, people left. People left because we've realized. So, for example, over the decade, what has happened is countries in Central Europe have developed, right, as a result of being part of the European Union. So, yeah, I'm making significantly less money than I was in the UK, which does rub me the wrong way because I feel like I have, the experience. But at the same time, my quality of life is way higher. So, you're making less, but the quality is way higher. So, many people realize these things, and many people just move back and they said, F off. Okay, if I'm making 300 and even maybe 400 euros less a month, but I get to have a nice apartment, a good quality food, at the end of the day, I don't have to spend so much money on travel. Like, I don't know if I paid like 130 GBP a month for just the tube. Like, it's crazy amounts of money. Everything is dirty. Yeah. Oh gosh, what are we gonna do? I feel like normal countries need to unite together. I think that there is no other way. But in any case, you guys, let me know what you think. Let me know if you think that this actually has any impact on your economy and your trading with the UK. If that means that India is like clearly on top right now, right? How that feel? How does that feel when the tables are turning? And as he had mentioned, that there are lots of paradoxes we've heard throughout the video, and we know which they are, right? So let me know, how does that feel watching that for you? And with that being said, thank you so much for watching this video with me. If you did enjoy, please give a thumbs up, share a like, and subscribe to this channel. And I'll see you next one. Until then, please do take care. I'm sending lots of love and peace. Bye-bye.